Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today we're doing another page in our watercolor journal books and we are going to be painting some Snapdragons today. So a lovely stalk-like flower with lots of beautiful blooms in all kinds of different colors. So this is a great one and it's great for beginners. So you can see, to go over supplies if you're new here, I have a 6x9 Bao watercolor sketchbook. This has 100% cotton paper in it and it's a 140-pound cold press. I have my core watercolor paints, QOR by Golden, and this is my 24 color set. We're going to go through the colors we're going to use today as we use them. And then I have two brushes today, a size 10 and a size 3, both round brushes, both Princeton brushes. One is an Aqua Elite, one is a Velvet Touch. Whatever round brushes you have will work great for this. But if you want to learn more information about any of the supplies and materials that I use, you can see the links in the description of this video. Okay, so let's get started. First, you can see I've taped out the edges of my watercolor sketchbook. So if you want to mask out your sketchbook, you can do that now. We're going to do two things. We're going to paint Snapdragons, a big field of them here, but we're also going to put in a sky. But we're going to keep it simple. This is great for practicing your gradient washes. So a gradient wash is when it's darkest at one end and gets lighter and lighter at the other end. So I'm going to use, and I don't have any space in my palette right now for this. So let's clear a space here. Just going to wet this. And actually, you know what? I have an extra palette here. I'm just going to tuck this over in the side. I have lots of space on this palette. You can use anything for, almost anything for a palette. Anything porcelain or ceramic that you have. All right, so I'm using Cobalt Teal. This is one of my favorite colors in this palette that you can't really recreate from a standard, mixing of colors. This Cobalt Teal, I never used to use it before, but then I discovered my love of it for skies in a lot of different settings. Not always, this is a very turquoisey, kind of Caribbean ocean color, but I love it for skies in some applications. So I'm just going to make a nice watery puddle of that. And now I'm going to take this watery puddle with my big brush and I'm going to go right across the top of the sky, keeping it nice and wet as I go down. And my goal is to go from dark to light. So now instead of picking up, well, I'm going to put a little bit more on here. Instead of picking up more paint, I'm going to pick up water on my brush and come to the edge of here and start to bring it down. Pick up more water. Pick up more water. And this is faded out to white pretty immediately. So if I wanted to bring in more color, I could go back up to the top. And you could do this wet on wet too. Meaning you would wet the whole page first. Whoops, just introduced a whole bunch of blue down here. You could wet the whole page first and then start at the top with your color. And all of this down here is going to be covered up by flowers, so I'm not even going to go any further. I'll let that dry. But you just want a nice even, so just showing you even dampness across the page, and then we're just going to let it dry. This is definitely easier on 100% cotton paper versus a cellulose paper. You just have to learn to work with the paper that you have. It's definitely possible on cellulose or wood paper, but you may have to practice a little bit more with your water control. So let this dry, and then we're going to come in and do our Snapdragons. All right, our nice gradient blue sky is all dry. If when it dries, when you do your version of it and it's not dark enough for you or not vibrant enough for you, you can just do the whole process again. Start with another layer on top, which will build layers of vibrancy, and then grade it down. Okay, so Snapdragons. I love Snapdragons because They're super easy to paint in a loose way, and they come in all kinds of colors. So yellows and pinks and purples and oranges and all the in-between shades and mixed varieties. So a snapdragon is a stem with lots of blooms all around it, and as we get towards the top, they get thinner and thinner with greens popping out. So we are going to start by building our blooms, and I'm second guessing my size 10 brush on this size paper with as many as I'm going to do, but I'm going to stick with it. All right, I'm going to start with some magenta, Quinacridone magenta, and I'm going to water this down a bit, and I'm going to build my first one. So I'm going to go in with a watered down version of magenta. Now, if you need to, I'm just looking for a pencil on my desk, draw out a stem that will help you. You don't want to paint it out at first because we're going to do that second. But if you want to draw out your stems to follow, just to help guide you, you can. So I'm just going to draw a stem here. It's very light. I'm using a very hard pencil. And actually, let's make this, well, we'll go even taller. So I'm going to go way up here. So I'm going to take my magenta, and I'm just going to start to plop in blooms that cross the stem, but are clearly kind of coming out from that center and blossoming outward, if that makes sense. But some of them, you know, it's a three-dimensional shape, so some of them will be attached to the front of it, so it'll be overlapping the stem. You're just going to leave some spaces in between. Now, usually like right around here, it's kind of the fullest. Then it gets narrower towards the bottom and narrower towards the top. And now I'm going to go in with more magenta, but more concentrated. So darker, less water. And I'm just going to drop in some of that color right where the stem would meet the blooms. And you can go even lighter on your first layer, but see how that's creating some depth and shape? Okay. Now I'm going to take sap green, and I'm going to start at the bottom, creating the stem, and I'm going to find the bits between the blooms, but not go over top of the blooms. I'm going to skip. I'm going to say this and this and this is all covered up, and this is still wet. So you are going to see some of the green when it touches it bleeding into the magenta. And you might want to let yours dry a little bit just so it's not bleeding too much. Like let the blooms dry for a second or two before you start. Now at the top, there's also lots of extra kind of green bits. And we can even throw in some, because the blooms come from these green little encasings that they pop out of. So I'm going to even add just more kind of bits of green like around the little bloom sections. And there we go. We have our first snapdragon, and it is lovely. You can even take some yellow or some green gold if you want to add a little bit of that to the green areas so they have some different colors and dimension. And even with your sap green, you could add maybe a little phthalo blue green shade to make a darker, like vibrant, cool green if you want, and even add just a little bit of that to a few spots to give it even deeper, richer colors in the middle there. but not everywhere. You want that, I like the warmth of the green, the sap green that has the yellow undertones to it. All right, so now that we've done one, we're going to do a whole bunch of them in all different colors. Okay, so I am going to, since I have purple out, I'll start with purple. And the lighter you start your first layer, the more contrast you're going to get. So again, you can draw out your stem if you want. And you know, I'm going to start this one way down at the bottom here, so that it's like going off the page, because this is like a whole bunch of them. Don't forget to skip some spaces. So that was with my bigger brush, and then I'm going to take some Dioxazine purple, more concentrated, with my smaller brush. I like going in with the smaller brush. It just helps me control it a little bit more, not as much paint. And with that sap green, and I'm going to go definitely a little higher here in like the, I think I have to go a little wider here with some of the blooms. This got a little too narrow, but that's okay. Flowers come in all different shapes and sizes, and I can just put some, let's see, some green out a little wider to show that they haven't popped yet. And you can do more pinks. I'm going to go, and purples, I'm going to use yellow, but I definitely need some mixing space for this. Good thing I brought out this second palette. So I'm going to get some, this is a cadmium yellow medium. I'm going to water it way down to get a really light. I'm going to go this way with this one. I'm going to go nice and wide here, like taper off quickly. And then with this, you can also mix a different color. So very light yellow, I'm going to take some, actually magenta, but I'm going to mix it with a little yellow first. I'm going to get it started. So making an orangey color. I'm going to add this orangey color to the center. And we get this lovely wet on wet, like two-tone. This one I got a little funky on the shapes. I feel like they're not blooms necessarily. I'm going to clean them up a little bit. This one's just super full. Sap green. So that's all, we're gonna have that all kind of covered up in there. going to go even a little darker. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit. And even a little darker color to it. Okay. Just adding a little green in the middle. And now I'm going to just do this. I'm going to keep doing this till I fill the whole page with a nice, maybe like one. I'm going to try to like cross some. One, another one in here, three, another one in here. Yeah, we'll call it a day. All right, we're back and we've filled our page with a bunch more. Basically, I've kind of tried to alternate as much as I could, not have too many next to each other, but not being too patterny. But we're going to fill in some of the other spots with just some greenery and some green leaves. So let's start with, we'll start with our larger brush. Get a little more sap green. I don't want to overwhelm the area, so we're going to use this sparingly. And I'm actually, I think, just going to use mostly, not even leaves, but just more grass-like greenery. Just to fill in some of these spots. Maybe I'll put in a few leaves. You could put in a few other like little dots of wildflowers. Yeah, I think that's better than going too crazy. More of this like wispy kind of stilt grass. I'm going to go with a little bit darker color with my smaller brush, just to create a little contrast, a little depth back here, so everything's not the same green. But again, I don't need to go crazy, crazy. There we go. Now we can take off our tape, and you'll notice I did tiny, because these are a tall flower. I wanted to use as much space this way as possible. So I have this 1/2 inch or 1 inch tape. Is this half? No, this is 1 inch. So I made it, I put my tape all the way on the paper here to make a nice wide border, but then on the bottom, I only put a little bit on. There we go. Pretty as a picture. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for painting with me today. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, share with a friend who you think might also enjoy this one, and feel free to leave a comment, and I will see you for our next watercolor journal page very soon. Take care, y'all. Happy painting.